Hello everyone, we're going to be looking at the Danish opening center opening complex. They're related openings. We're going to use with little analysis, just light cursory analysis. And those miniature games are usually under 30 moves. And if I can find moves under 20, games under 20 moves, I use them. And the reason is because I clearly uh, displayed and used by the side that you're studying. So, for example, we're going to be looking at only the white side today of this system, not the black side. So, we want to see games where white just has his way in the position. So, we're going to get right into it, and we'll uh, see if you learn this system by the end of this video. The first game is from Paris, 1863. Player named Linden versus a player named Mac Zuski. Game started out e4, e5, d4. There it is. E takes d4, c3. So we have this Danish gambit here. D takes c3, bishop c4, c takes b2, bishop takes b2. And you can already see the main principles here is that for the pawn, white gets a tremendous lead in development here. This is played in the 1800s. So black had no problem grabbing pawns here. This is the first lesson in the opening right here to learn this system is that you must be willing to sacrifice material for development. Knight f6 is played, knight g. Capture the pawn, all right? Not realizing how far behind the development he is, okay? And this gives white some compensation here, okay, for his lack of material. Castles is played. White just merely keeps developing. Knight takes c3. Knight takes c3. Again, look at the development. Bishop takes c3. Bishop takes c3. So I know some of you saying, wow, this is terrible play by black. Yes, it is. And this is what you want to see because this is exactly the type of development that white wants. This is like perfect development. Okay, black has traded all of his development away. There's 4 open files. Okay, white is just up 4-0 in development if you want to count. Okay, so at this point, simple attacking moves are the order of the day. Queen g5, so the queen comes out early. All right, so all of the things that you're taught not to do, we see happening here. White plays rook e1, h4 is fine also. The king is forced to move. If king f8, bishop b4 is possible. But after d6, bishop takes d6, c takes d6, queen takes d6. And white is so far ahead in development that he's able to give away a piece and not make a difference. So king d8 was played. And now f4 was played. Good idea, but the better move here is h4. Then after queen g6, you got queen e2 threatening queen d7 mate. So knight c6, bishop d5 again, threatening queen d7 mate after removing the knight from c6. f5, bishop takes c6, and rook e8 will be forced. Of course, black loses material because rook e8 stops the median mate on queen d7. Queen takes e8, queen takes, rook takes, king takes, and bishop d5. Okay, and we can see how the space advantage translated to a material advantage in this position. Instead of h4, though, f4 was played. And the reason why f4 is inferior is because it allows the move queen c5 check. However, black did not play that. Black just simply took the pawn and played queen takes f4. Bishop takes g7. Rook g8. Queen g4. And this is not white being naive, but he simply wants to deflect the queen away from the protection of the f6 square so that the bishop can play to f6 and mate. And White's position is picturesque and beautiful. And if queen takes f6, then simply queen takes g8 check, or queen e7, queen takes g8 check, and black was forced to resign in 15 moves. So you can already see what it looks like for white. Like you could go over this game again, or follow me to the next game right here, where we go to London 1868, and we see the player known as the Black Death at the time, Joseph Henry Blackburn, versus a player named Cuthbertson. Again, we see the pawn being sacrificed for rapid development. Here, black wants to slow things down a bit. And so now e5 being played has some cramping effect on f6. But it's still a little bit slow. But again, we're not getting into deep theory here. So d takes c3, b takes c3, knight c6, knight f3. Again, the question is, where is white's compensation now for the pawn deficit? Okay, development is equal, and white has a busted pawn structure to boot. Okay, so the answer is that in this position, white doesn't have any compensation for the pawn deficit. So you want to watch out for these type of situations here. Okay, when you notice in the other game, when white gambited the pawns, he had a lead in development. He had extra time. Okay, here there is no compensation. So that's lesson number 2. You want to avoid those type of situations. However, the Black Death, Blackburn is able to turn it around. The reason is because black starts wasting time. So he plays f6, and of course, if white played, e takes f6 and help accelerate black's development, then that move would be fine. However, he simply develops a piece and shows that f6 is just a mere waste of time. The bishop d7 is played, queen takes d5, and now the game takes on kind of a different nature here as white regains his pawn, knight g7, queen d3. And now the game gets a little sharper. Okay. Now he takes the pawn, check, bishop takes d3, knight g5. And right here is interesting because the best move here for black would just be to exchange, although white would be a little bit better. There's a lot of open files here. He has the 2 bishops, okay, and the lead in development here. However, he tries to preserve his piece, and the bishop gets trapped here. So after c5, this is why knight e5 is played. Knight takes d3, king d2, and knight c5 is played here. Better is knight takes c1, even though black is worse here at this point. Knight takes c1, knight c3, right? No need to automatically capture, because after rook takes c1, just simply knight takes d5. It's better to keep that pawn on d5. So knight c3, the knight is still trapped, although it can play knight takes a2. That's all right. Rook takes a2, and white is just better here. Okay, it's better to give up the a pawn than the d pawn. Game continued. Knight c5, knight e6, knight takes, and I'll just speed through this as white went on to win a nice game. Of course, after rook takes e6, now king takes e6 because of the fork here, and then picking up the rook here. So Blackburn went on that game, but I wanted to show you that game is because so that you would avoid those type of positions. If you give up material, then you can't play, just like an equal game like this. All right. So thankfully for white, black started to make mistakes, like first one being f6, and dwindle his advantage away. Here's a better game by Blackburn. Here's on in a simul. Now here's already a suspicious move. The queen sortie coming out, right? Usually very suspicious. Knight takes c3, and again we see this acceleration and development. d6 castles, Bishop takes c3, mistake by black. Knight takes c3, right? Just giving up the bishop for what? Right. So the bishop pair is gone. Only piece out is the queen. So we have the same story. Black has no development except the queen, and white is going to attack while he has the upper hand in force. This is very important. Is while you have the numbers, you have to attack. Okay. It's just like a fight. Like if you have five men against two men, right? The five men had the advantage. But if you give the two guys a chance to go and get their friends, and they get three more friends, then it's 5-5. There's no more advantage now. All right, so it's the same thing. When you have lead and development, it's temporary. So if you waste time, then the opponent will just catch up in development, and whatever you did to get that lead in development in the first place, in this case like sacrificing pawns, then you'll just be losing because you'll just be pawns down. Game continue. Knight e7, f4, knight bc6, bishop e3, castle. So we see black is getting his pieces out. Queen d2, and now bishop d3. At this point, the game is equal here. Even though black is still up a pawn, white has excellent development and nice space advantage and nice command in the center. So white has compensation. f5. So black starts to lose the thread on the position a little bit. Bishop d7, bishop g5, and now we see an initiative by by white here. Now here Blackburn, now this is a simul, so he wasn't putting his full energy in the position. He moved f6 right away. Knight c6, f takes g7, rook f e8, followed by knight d5. Okay, and that's pretty much all she wrote. Said he played bishop takes e7, the queen dropped back, and he had the same idea. Knight d5, knight e6, rook f5, check, king h1, king h8, rook h5, c6, and that's a big mistake because you can see the rook is lined up here and this bishop is here. So c6, e5, he tries g6, but at this point it's too late as this g pawn is overworked, can't capture the rook because the bishop on d3 aids the queen in mate. All right, so and then you already have the queen threatening mate here. So good simul. Again, we see the principles at work. Rapid development followed by vicious attack on the queen side. Notice you see some of black's pieces lingering in the background. Another principle also is the mobile pawn center. Okay, when you get this setup right here, you want to be able to push those pawns. You don't want them to get blockaded and fixed. So notice how white's pawns remain mobile. Although black tried to slow them down, you see them expanding all the way to the end of the game. Let's keep going. Here's a game, 1876, Max Beer, seen a player named Rocamora. Again, we see the Danish gambit. Full development here by white. Now here, white should have castled king side. Okay, and he has compensation for the pawn. Now, this looks like a good move here, but it's tactically after castles here, e5 and knight g4. All right, black is basically defending. here and basically caught up in not caught up in development, but not far enough behind in development to justify uh, white being 2 pawns down. White has some compensation, but not enough compensation. Okay, so the mistake that black makes here is instead of just simply continuing his development, because that's the major issue, right? He's grabbed 2 pawns, and so he should be concentrating on developing. Instead, he trades off a piece, okay? And this only helps white. So bishop 5, knight e8. So again, the theme of the pawn expansion in the center, driving away pieces. G5. We see now that the attacks on the king side are beginning to take a toll on white as he's forced to compromise his king side with the move G6. Queen D8. And again, we see the same story. This game is pretty much over at this black's development. There's rook on A8, bishop on C8. The rook is still on F8. The queen is on D8. That was in bad situation here. White plays queen B2. Queen B3 is much better. Just simply attacking the F7 pawn. Okay, there's really no proper defense here, and the game would have been over. Instead, he played queen takes b2, and this put him in a position where black can play, tactical move here and kind of get out of the situation. So he played rook takes d8, knight takes c4, rook takes d8. This is what black was counting on. Knight takes b2, but after rook takes f8, check, king takes, knight takes h7, king g8. Nice combination, which leads to mate. Rook e8, king h7, rook h8. Let's look at another one. Just trying to get to some of the some more modern games. Here's a game from 1990 between Sergei Arkhipov 2447 versus Laszlo Barkse 2335. So a little bit more modern. Okay, so here we got our Scotch Gambit. Again, all these openings are related. Scotch Gambit, Ponziani opening, Danish, Center, Goring, Gambit. But again, we see the same principles at work. Since it's a more modern game, you see better play by black. Notice that he's just developing. White, of course, is trying to disrupt that. E takes, D takes. This is all well-known stuff. F takes G7, rook G8, bishop H6. Queens come off the board. And you might say, wow, how can this be a miniature? Bishop F5 is played. And already, it's a mistake by black. F6. F6 is a better move. And the game is equal here, believe it or not. This gives the king a place to duck out. We'll see what happens in this game. Bishop F5, castle. And even with the queens off the board, it's still dangerous for the king, for the black king. Rook Fe1 check, king D7, knight G5. And we see the same principles even with the queens off the board. Notice the restricted nature of the pieces. This rook is kind of stuck here in no man's land. The rook does not want to be stuck behind a pawn, right? Rooks belong on open files and ranks. This rook is not developed, okay? This bishop is immobilized because of the pin, all right? And so this leads to all type of trouble. These pawns are attacked. So, of course, black goes to the, basic chess. Okay, let's trade off some pieces. Rook takes e8, king takes e8, and now knight d5. Again, threatening a fork here, and c7. Okay, and then after bishop e7, right, the cover against the fork. Simply knight takes h7, and black resigned here. Okay, renewing the threat of this check here on f6. So I know some of you out there are saying, hey, what about the simple move bishop takes h7? The problem is due to white's development. All he has to do, not only his development, but his space advantage, right, with that pawn on g7, all he has to do is play knight takes c7, and that's checkmate. Here's a game from Alexander Morozevich, a young Alexander Morozevich. I want to say he was 16 years old at this time, rated 2575, versus British Grandmaster and author Mark Hebden. Again, same family of openings. Instead, Alexander Morozevich plays the center game. All right, so it's kind of like a reverse Scandinavian or Scandinavian with white. Queen takes d4. This opening has long been, relegated to obscurity, just due to the fact that the queen is being developed early, etc. But Morozevich, his whole career has always picked up these type of openings and played them sporadically, whether it's the center game, Shigorin's defense, Albin counter gambit. And if you're interested in those openings, check out my video where I analyze all of Morozevich's games for his whole career. In the Albin, I have a video uh, um, Albin counter gambit according to Alexander Morozevich, and also the Shigorin defense according to Alexander Morozevich. So back to this game, knight c6 hitting the queen, queen e3, knight f6, knight c3. And again, here is not a gambit, so it's just called the center game. All right, so black is not up a pawn here, and he just calmly develops. So here theory has black, equalizing with no problem. But I just wanted to show you this game for Morozevich, as it is a famous game. And we can see opposite side castling. The goals are obvious. White wants to rip open the king side. Black be attacking on the other side of the board. So he threatens mate, right? one move mate. But more importantly, it gets black to compromise his kingside defenses somewhat. So bishop g5 now, queen b6, and knight a4 is played. If bishop takes f6, then simply bishop to d6, threatening queen takes b2 here. So it's not like he's losing a piece or something. Knight a4, queen a5 is played. Bishop takes f6 now. Queen takes a4. Knight c3 from Morozevich. Bishop takes c3. Bishop takes c3. Now knight e3, attacking the rook. b3 from Morozevich. Queen takes a2. Rook d2 as the c2 square was threatened. Queen a3 check. Bishop b2. Queen e7. Bishop e2. D takes. F takes. So right now the game is dynamically balanced. But look at the white pieces. This pawn on here on h6, very dangerous, and then you have this bishop on this diagonal that white has to black has to constantly look out for. Okay, queen takes e4, queen g5, threatening to go on the dark squares. And here the safe move to maintain the equality is just queen or whatever, in time trouble or what. But actually I overlooked that myself. I just spotted that. Queen e6. Wow. Yeah, queen e6 loses actually the rook d8. That's incredible. Yeah, and then if bishop d7, then just rook takes d7 again with the same idea of getting the queen off of this diagonal. Have to look at this game in detail analysis later. Wow. Yeah, queen takes e4. Yeah, after queen g5, I don't know if black has a defense here. I don't think black has a defense. Have to look at it later. So instead, he played knight d5 in order to, to stop the same idea, the queen coming to f6. But then he just played, snatched the rook off. Queen takes, queen f6, and now he played king f8, which was his idea of escaping. I guess if bishop a3, then he played c5. But Morozevich just simply played, well, we all would have probably played bishop to some people would have played bishop a3, but bishop c4. If the queen moves, then of course it's checkmate. Okay, there's really nothing that can be done here. If rook a move like rook e6, then you can throw bishop a3 in the mix, or queen h8 or something like that. What else do we have here? After bishop c4, if queen d7, yeah, same thing, bishop a3, because now this is no longer valid. The c5, bishop takes c5 by Alexander Morozevich. And you saw that black had some counterplay, as he should, with the queen coming out early, but white's dedicated attack on the king side, and weak combined with removing the loss of what black's fianchettoed bishop, um, you know, creating those weaknesses on the queen side, you know, made made this game what it was. Another miniature here, and by this time, I'm sure you have the idea of this opening again here. And I didn't even tell you who these players were. These are like unknown players, but the point is after 9 moves, white is already better here. Although white is down a pawn here, white is already better due to the compensation. Right? What's the compensation? There's lead in development. Remember, a lead in development is temporary. Right? So you must play with great vigor here. Okay, in these positions. Okay, so yes, white has compensation. White is a little bit better, but if you make slow moves, for instance, you do a silly move like h3 or something like that. Okay, this gives black the time he needs. You gotta find a vigorous move, and white finds it here in b4. Okay, b4 does a couple of things. Not besides threatening to attack this knight and drive it away with b5. Okay, it's also threatening to put this bishop right on this diagonal and threaten mate here. Okay, so king h8. The black panics here. Plays king h8. His best move might have been to try to counterattack in the center somehow, maybe d5 or something like that. But after rook d1, it's hard to see what he's gonna do. So he plays king h8. This is exactly what white wants. White has black on his heels now. b5. The knight must move. Okay, so now he loses development, gains time. Bishop b2. This is what you're looking for, folks. Black is forced to make compromising moves and neglect his development. Look at this position. Now you can play e5 here, right? Move like e5 and the bust open the position, right? White can't really afford. I mean, black can't afford to capture this pawn. Okay, the knight takes e5, and for the same reason, he can't afford to bypass the pawn. Okay, because e6, knight g5 again. But instead of playing e5, he played rook a d1, natural move, right? It's not incisive, but natural. Again, how slow is that? a6, b6, c takes b6, rook takes d6, b5, just completely dominating white here. Excuse me, black here. Black finds a very strong move. It plays a very strong move here. Rook takes f6, just devastating, devastating move. The idea is if Rook takes f6, and there's mate with the two bishops. So d5 is played. Rook swings back to d6. And the reason is because now this pawn is unprotected. d4, and this queen takes d4, and white had enough. So that is the last game I'll be showing you, and hopefully after going over these games, now you see exactly what white is. This is for aggressive minded players and tactically aware players. So not only will this improve your tactics, but it's a lot of fun to play like this. Okay, so the spirit of this system is one, sacrifice of material to gain time, right, and in the form of lead and development. Also, you have open files and space. Okay, most of these advantages are temporary advantages. Okay, which means that you're on the clock. Okay, you might be down 2 pawns and you might have lead in development, but you're on the clock. That means you have to go attack, attack, attack. Find the most vigorous move. Avoid the passive moves, and go destroy your opponent in this opening. So that closes the chapter on this particular opening from the white side, and perhaps next time we'll look at it from the black side and see what black has to say about this. So until then, I'll see you on the next video. Go play some speed and bullet chess and get a feel for this opening, and let me know how you feel about it below. Please check the links below, support the channel, and